The time by Caracas is 6 p.m. and this is CBX Business News. The business news headlines are brought to you by QMax Wealth Management, making more possible. Jamaica's next growth phase, regional capital markets, and Canada's economic push. Good evening and welcome to CBX Business News for Thursday, July 30, 2026. I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, Blue Maho says Jamaica is positioned for its next phase of economic growth, pointing to India's growth model as blueprint. Also ahead, the Caribbean Development Bank approves a study to explore a regional stock exchange for participating CARICOM member states. And later, Canada is fast tracking nearly $200 billion in major projects as it moves to strengthen its economy and expand trade. Stay with us as we unpack these stories and more right after the break.
Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited has been a part of Jamaica's manufacturing landscape for over 20 years. By crafting unique flavors and fragrances, we have become a part of your favorite household and food items such as beverages, ice cream, household cleaners, and much more. Known throughout the Caribbean for the highest quality, we continue to innovate with strong leadership, a dedicated team with integrity. We go the extra mile for our customers. Create the next taste sensation. Contact us at 876-9235-111 or visit our website, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn pages.
It smells so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It smells so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It smells so good right now. Don't never, ever, ever wanna calm down. Oh, no, no.
The local news is brought to you by Derrimon Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with a fresh perspective on where Jamaica's next wave of economic growth could come from. Blue Maho Holdings is making a bold case for Jamaica's investment outlook, suggesting the country may be on the verge of an economic transformation similar to that experienced by India decades ago. In a sit-down interview, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer David Mullings told CBX Business News that investors should look beyond the short-term market movements and instead focus on the structural changes reshaping the Jamaican economy.
The way I'd rather people think about this from a framework standpoint, what should you be looking for? So we're talking about strong long-term growth industries, but I think it's also important to think about where's Jamaica today, where it can be in 25 years, who already has done that and been there. So from an economic development standpoint, I look at India, for example. I think that Jamaica is 25 years behind India. Right, so they had a stock exchange, companies started to go public, family-owned business started listed there, growing middle class, more retail investors were opening accounts, family business were listing, the government was divesting companies as well. They had a massive boom in terms of urbanization, education had been going up, big IT infrastructure play. That don't sound like Jamaica? You go back to Singapore and the four Asian tigers, the South Koreas, the Hong Kongs, the Taiwans, you look at them in the 70s and 80s, the same thing happened.
Mullings says Jamaica is primed for a stronger growth cycle and believes history offers investors a blueprint for identifying the country's next high-growth industries.
So if you look at how other countries already developed and benefited, Jamaica is coming after. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to have to guess and spell which industries are going to grow. If people are going to be getting more income or per capita income is going up, and the middle class is growing, there are specific things that will grow faster than GDP growth. Our GDP growth has been anemic. That's going to change now. We are primed for a nice growth spurt. So I would start by looking at India 20 or 25 years ago, and look at the four Asian tigers back in the 70s and 80s, and that will tell you where I believe you're going to have some growth opportunities.
At the same time, the Blue Maho CEO says Jamaica's global reputation for speed on the track must now be matched by speed in the marketplace if the country is to compete for investment and sustain long-term economic growth. Mullings highlighted the pace at which business is conducted in Jamaica as becoming a competitive disadvantage in an increasingly fast-moving global economy.
One of the biggest things is that we care more about the speed of our athletes and the speed of doing business. We are celebrating speed on the track, not speed in business. Efficiency don't matter to us. We say, I saw it go, man. I soon come. That's not how global business works. That's not what investors expect. Investors are globally oriented. Your partners are global. So you need to compete globally. So I think that is our fundamental problem. Essentially, we need to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, as Marcus Garvey said.
That was Blue Maho Holdings Chairman and CEO David Mullings. And the call to make doing business faster in Jamaica is already taking shape. The Jamaica Customs Agency is preparing to take another step in its digital transformation with the launch of a new mobile application designed to make customs services faster and more accessible for businesses. CBX Business News spoke with Acting CEO and Commissioner of Customs, Kirk Benjamin, who says the initiative reflects the government's wider drive to modernize public services and improve the ease of doing business.
We are looking, and you'll hear about a mobile app that will come also. Our Minister of Finance will launch that in short order because she's been pushing us. Efficiency, productivity. The Prime Minister gave the mandate. Our Minister said, look here, we need to be the first to do it. I hear Minister Hill saying that his ministry is, well, we are going to be the first, Minister. We know, but we've been pushing all of those things about the productivity, and so we are launching that app very shortly.
Acting CEO and Commissioner of Customs, Kirk Benjamin. Buying a home remains out of reach for many Jamaicans, but JN Bank is introducing a new cash incentive aimed at helping more people build the savings needed to get there. The bank has launched a Tell a Friend mortgage referral program that rewards eligible participants when someone they refer successfully secures a mortgage. Chief Product Officer for Mortgages, Dave Hansen, says the initiative is designed to help Jamaicans strengthen their financial position.
The initiative aligns with our broader efforts to encourage greater financial inclusion and stronger savings habits among Jamaicans. Whether or not you're in the market for a home today, we're giving you an opportunity to earn an incentive that can be put towards securing your financial future. It can help you build your deposit, cover closing costs, or strengthen your savings until you're ready to purchase a home.
That was JN Bank Chief Product Officer for Mortgages, Dave Hansen. In other news, Jamaica's merchandise exports declined during the first 4 months of the year, highlighting continued pressure on the country's external trade performance despite a modest increase in imports. New figures released by the Statistical Institute of Jamaica show export earnings totaled $547.4 million between January and April, down 10.6% from the corresponding period last year. The decline was largely driven by a 41.2% fall in exports of crude materials, excluding fuels. Meanwhile, the country's import bill rose 0.9% to $2.5 billion, reflecting stronger demand for raw materials and capital goods as businesses expanded investment. The United States remained Jamaica's largest trading partner, followed by China, Brazil, Japan, and Trinidad and Tobago on the import side. The United States also led export destinations alongside Russia, the Netherlands, Canada, and the United Kingdom, with export earnings to those 5 markets increasing 3% despite the broader decline in overall exports. Now to news from the petroleum market. Fuel prices were mostly higher on Thursday, with diesel recording the largest increases. Automotive diesel rose by $6 to $229.50 per liter, while 87 gasoline increased by 47 cents to $204.87. 90 gasoline edged up by 46 cents, ending the week at $213.73. Propane was the only fuel in this group to decline, slipping by 25 cents to $77.71, while kerosene increased by $4.50 to $200.92. Butane rose by 25 cents to $87.18. Ultra-low sulfur diesel recorded the week's largest increase, climbing $10.50 to $249.59 per liter. We move to the latest updates from the JSE equities. In Thursday's trading session, the JSE market activity resulted in the trading of 111 stocks, of which 52 advanced, 39 declined, and 20 traded firm. Leading the winners are Mailpack Group, Palace Amusement Company, Derrimont Trading Company, and Jamaica Public Service Company 9.5%. While leading the losers are Medical Disposables and Supplies, Productive Business Solutions 9.25%, Perpetual Cumulative USD, Margaritaville Turks USD, and Dolphin Cove. The main index advanced by 2,302.28 points to close at 370,123.16 points. The junior market index advanced by 15.21 points to close at 2,982.51 points. It's time for the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. In today's Market Education feature, we're talking about yield basis. Yield basis is a way of expressing the value of a bond by focusing on the income it generates rather than its price. It is typically calculated by dividing the bond's annual interest or coupon payment by its purchase price and expressing the result as a percentage. Using yield basis makes it easier to compare bonds with different prices and interest rates on a consistent basis. That was the Market Education feature, brought to you by CARICRIS, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for the local news segment. Please stay with us. The regional news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derrimont Trading, better from the start. The Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, Tease the Senses, and Pulse Investments.
Mikey, is what sweet you saw?
Yeah, dear babes. Where's your catty? Me and you go party tonight.
Party? You secure your future yet? I'm careless.
Did
you know that over time the stock market has provided a reliably high return on investments? Be sure to contact a licensed stockbroker for more information on this exciting investment opportunity.
Taking care of business, Mikey?
Yeah, Cathy. I'm securing my future. Want to come look over my stock portfolio?
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, providing a fair, efficient, and transparent stock market.
Welcome back. And now for the regional business news. The Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, has approved a $100,000 grant to support a feasibility study into the establishment of a regional stock exchange for participating CARICOM member states. The study, to be carried out by the Caribbean Community Private Sector Organization, CPSO, will examine whether a shared securities market could improve access to investment, increase market liquidity, and reduce the cost of raising capital across the region. The CDB says the initiative addresses fragmented capital markets that continue to limit cross-border investment and access to financing, particularly for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. The assessment will also review the legal and regulatory requirements, review international models, and consult regional stakeholders before recommending the most viable approach. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is shedding light on how Caribbean Citizenship by Investment, CBI programs are recorded in official economic statistics. In a podcast released today, the fund explained that not every payment made under a Citizenship by Investment program qualifies as an investment for statistical purposes. Instead, the accounting treatment depends on whether applicants make non-refundable contributions or invest in approved assets such as real estate. Senior economic statistician at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Prunella Charles Williams, explained why the distinction matters.
Well, Jim, interestingly, it's not always an investment, and how it is recorded within the macroeconomic statistics would depend on the option that is selected by the individual. That is whether it is the non-refundable contribution to the fund option or the investment in real estate option. And this distinction is quite critical when we are compiling the macroeconomic statistics. So for the non-refundable contribution to the fund, these payments are not recorded as investments. Instead, they are treated as transfers from the individual to the government or the institution receiving the funds. And this is because the person making the payment does not receive a financial asset or an ownership stake in return for making this contribution. And for the investment option, it is treated as an investment, the investment in real estate, that is, since the applicant is actually acquiring a tangible asset.
The IMF says those classifications affect key economic indicators. Charles Williams went further to demonstrate how different CBI transactions are recorded depending on the type of investment.
Let's look at the first option. If it is the 500,000 represents a contribution to the fund and goes into the government's general budget, say it helps to pay for wages and salaries or other budgetary support, then this transaction is recorded as a current transfer from a non-resident to the government. But if the payment is directed to a national development fund that finances infrastructure projects such as building roads, schools, or hospitals, then it would be recorded as a capital transfer. Now, either way, the transaction appears as a credit in the country's balance of payments, and that is because the country is receiving funds from abroad. And of course, there is a corresponding debit entry in the balance of payments in the country of the individual purchasing the citizenship. Now, with option 2, if the 500,000 represents a purchase of real estate, then the value of the property is recorded as direct investment and would be recorded within your financial account. If the 500,000, however, represents a less than 10% stake in an investment project, then it would be recorded as a portfolio investment.
That was ECCB Senior Economic Statistician Prunella Charles Williams. In other news, Trinidad and Tobago's liquefied natural gas (LNG) exports increased to 10.7 billion cubic meters in 2025 as the country recovered from several years of natural gas supply constraints. According to the Energy Institute's 2026 statistical review of world energy, exports rose from 10.3 billion cubic meters in 2024. South and Central America remained Trinidad and Tobago's largest market, followed by Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. The report says Europe continues to be an important destination for the country's LNG exports, although buyers have diversified supply sources since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The report also notes that competition is intensifying. The United States exported a record 147 billion cubic meters of LNG in 2025, reinforcing its position as the world's largest exporter. It adds that projects including Mento, Manatee, and potentially Dragon will be critical to increasing Trinidad and Tobago's gas supply and supporting future LNG exports. It's now time for news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 19 securities, of which 7 advanced, 7 declined, and 5 traded firm. Leading today's winners are Unilever Caribbean, Eric Solis Marketing, Prestige Holdings, and Angostura Holdings, while leading the losers are NCB Financial Group, Ansa McCall, Grace Kennedy, and National Enterprises. Trading activity resulted in the following movements. The All TNT Index declined by 5.65 points to close at 1,438.08. The Composite Index also declined, but by 5.21 points to close at 1,007.64. The cross-listed index dropped 0.67 points to close at 76.64, while the SME index advanced by 0.12 points to close at 76.60. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment is up next.
I'm trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
I'm also trading stocks to achieve my financial goals.
Start a conversation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Check jamstockx.com for information and a list of registered stockbrokers. You can also call the Jamaica Stock Exchange at 876-967-3271 for information on how to begin. I am achieving my financial goals.
I'm achieving my financial goals.
Welcome back. In international news, Canada is fast-tracking more than $200 billion in major infrastructure projects as the federal government moves to strengthen economic growth. Speaking in Red Deer, Alberta, Prime Minister Mark Carney says more than 25 nation-building projects have already been submitted for review through the Federal Major Projects Office. Together, the projects represent billions of dollars in potential investment aimed at boosting economic growth, creating jobs, and expanding Canada's export capacity.
In less than a year, more than 25 nation-building initiatives have been submitted to the Major Projects Office, which is job is to fast-track them. That represents $200 billion in investments to help Canada build bigger, move faster, and export more.
The Prime Minister says the government is also accelerating efforts to diversify trade beyond North America.
Canada already enjoys preferential access to 1.5 billion consumers in economies that represent 2/3 of global GDP. We just concluded a new trade agreement with the UAE that was negotiated in a record 47 days. By the end of the year, we intend to double our market access to 3 billion consumers by concluding new agreements with the ASEAN countries, with India, Thailand, and the Philippines.
That was Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney. Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Reserve says financial conditions are tightening even without another interest rate increase. The Federal Reserve says rising market interest rates are tightening financial conditions even as policymakers keep the benchmark interest rate unchanged. Speaking after the Federal Open Market Committee voted to keep the federal funds rate unchanged, Chair Kevin Warsh says investors, not the central bank, have pushed market borrowing costs higher as they reassess the outlook for inflation and economic growth.
So rates are higher today than they were 42 days ago. Markets have made decisions because we step back in part from trying to influence those. Market judgments have moved up on what nominal rates are across the Treasury curve. That doesn't mean we take them as by dictation, but we're observing them.
The chair stressed that the central bank is closely monitoring these market signals as it evaluates future monetary policy.
Markets are reacting in real time. In the period ahead, we've got important decisions to make about the policy rate. Markets in the intervening period, I think, have quite a bit of decisions to make. I'll see if I can put it this way. Monetary policy matters not just by what we say, or even what we do. Monetary policy matters by how it affects the real economy. And these prices that we see in financial markets is one of the many ways in which it affects the real economy. We'll be continuing to watch that market information, see how it responds to incoming events, and that can help inform our decision making when we meet in 7 or 8 weeks.
That was Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh. And Ukraine is also tightening monetary policy as inflation pressures build. Ukraine's central bank has raised interest rates for the first time in 16 months as policymakers move to contain inflation and strengthen confidence in the country's financial system. The National Bank of Ukraine increased its benchmark policy rate by 50 basis points to 15.5%, saying underlying inflation is expected to continue accelerating through the remainder of the year. Officials say higher interest rates should make hryvnia-denominated assets more attractive, helping to limit capital outflows from households and businesses while supporting financial stability. The central bank expects inflation to approach 10% by year-end before easing next year. It also projects fiscal stimulus will continue supporting economic activity, while the war limits inflationary pressures by suppressing domestic demand. And that's it for the international segment of the newscast. The news recap is coming up on the other side of the break. And now to recap our top stories. In the local news, Blue Maho says Jamaica is poised for next phase of economic growth. Regionally, CDB approves study for regional CARICOM stock exchange. And internationally, Canada accelerates $200 billion push to strengthen the economy. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Rashel Moncrieffe. Thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.